Welcome. This is Heather Knudsen, HomeSphere's Director of Marketing. I want to welcome each of you to today's event, Building Home for the Millennials, sponsored by Electrolux. We know today's topic is of great interest as we welcome our over 500 participants registered for today's event. And our first presenter today is Virginia Rainbow from Electrolux. Electrolux is a global leader in home appliances and appliances for professional use, selling more than 40 million products to customers in 150 countries every year. The company focuses on innovations that are thoughtfully designed and based on extensive consumer insight, so they were the perfect sponsor for today's event. Virginia is the Director of Projects and Process Improvements for Electrolux, and we're going to now hear a short presentation from our sponsor, Virginia, on behalf of Electrolux.
Thank you, Heather. It's wonderful to be sponsoring this on behalf of John Burns and HomeSphere. Thank you for inviting us. Today I wanted to give you just a little bit of an overview and remind everybody who Electrolux is. We are a global company. We have over 150 markets with almost a little over 50,000 people in 60 countries, and we're really proud that we focus completely on powered products for the home. Our global footprint based on our 2013 annual report shows that our focus is very much in kitchen and laundry, which are the products that, of course, are of most interest to this audience. And we are a large, in North America, we are a large segment of the Electrolux overall family. One of the things that really makes us unique is our professional heritage. So the Electrolux brand, especially in Europe and now in the States, on the professional level is where you find a lot of the kitchens and restaurants that have really allowed us to leverage the technology and their knowledge of how to cook and how to bring that to the residential kitchen into everybody's lives. So we're very pleased with our professional heritage and what that lends to us. But really what's important is our investment in North America. So we are headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina. Our entire leadership team for the North American sector is in Charlotte. We have one design center, and you can see by the chart that we're scattered across the country, allowing us to meet the needs of the builders and the contractors across the country. We have over almost 15,000 employees in the North American sector, with over 11 million square foot as a footprint. But really what's of interest to you guys are our brands. So we have our Electrolux brand, which is the parent company, and then we also sell under the Electrolux brand in North America. We have our Frigidaire brand as an entry place. It's a great start for home buyers and a lot of our multifamily customers. And then we can move up to Frigidaire Gallery, which is focused on time saving. Our professional line, Frigidaire Professional, really focuses on bringing some of the features that cooks watching the food channels are very interested in into a price point that they can afford without having to change cutouts for electrical needs. And then, of course, we have our Electrolux line. We've moved into that now where we bring everyday exceptional quality and performance with features that can't be found anyplace else. And then our Electrolux Icon, which is our ultimate in-home luxury. Those 5 brands really do meet the needs of just about any project or community. But how does that focus on the millennials? So one of the things that Electrolux is well known for is the research that we do and our consumer-based insights. That's how we develop our products. So what do they want in a home? The research that we did indicated that a lot of them are still urban-oriented because they're single and they haven't quite started their family yet. They have, but they still want the features and the benefits that they need. And so the 3 things that we're very focused on are that they're compact, because in those urban areas that the square footage can get pricey. They want energy efficiency if it affects their costs again. And then the cleaner and healthier homes, the sustainability. So when we make it compact, we're really thinking about smaller urban areas, and the compact laundry fits that need. We also have compact wall ovens, small needs dishwashers, so they're not full size, and then of course our high efficiency top load laundry centers, all meeting the needs of this generation. We're also focused on making it green. A lot of them are very much interested in Energy Star appliances. For instance, our front load laundry under our Electrolux brand saves 75% more energy and uses 56% more water. Very focused on the DOE transitions, and now our entire refrigeration line has met that. And then you can also add things like flexibility. So when we went through the top mount and made it DOE compliant, we also took that advantage to add features and benefits that you don't find in the top mounts of yesterday, with some flexibility in how their shelving can be done that allows them to really make it fit their lifestyle. We're also very big on corporate sustainability, making sure that, for instance, our dishwashers are all reclaimable stainless steel, making sure that we are keeping our footprint as small as possible. Very proud of the Dow Jones and Sustainability Awards that we are continuing to win based on our manufacturing footprint. And then, of course, the innovation that we bring in that too. So, for instance, in our design lab for 2014, one of the ideas that was very well received by the students and the competitors were the ability to build a small greenhouse, attach it using to your home using compost and reclaimed water, and grow your herbs and vegetables right there on your side of your home. The other thing that we really think millennials find important is the ability to check things out online. They're very connected these days, so having websites that are responsive to their needs, that show videos that allow them to contact us how they want to contact us and when they want to be contacted, as well as a strong social media presence in Facebook, Review.com, and 80 some odd other sites that we monitor to make sure that they're getting the information that they need to make the choices that they believe will benefit them. And that is how Electrolux really feels like we're meeting the needs of this new generation as they move into their home buying years. Heather?
That's great. Thanks, Virginia. I know I'm looking forward to seeing some of those products at your awesome booth at the International Builder Show next month in Las Vegas. So I encourage anybody that's participating and also attending to swing by and see the Electrolux booth as well. Thank you so much. And as we start planning for 2015, this is a great brand to consider. Just a reminder, if you have any questions for Virginia, I encourage you to use the webinar chat feature, asking your question that will be covered at the end of the program if we have some time at the end. And we're going to now turn our attention over to today's core presentation from John Burns Real Estate Consulting. They're an industry leader in housing research, and today we'll be providing an overview on building home for the millennials. I'd now like to pass over the presentation to Molly Carmichael and Chris Porter. Molly is a principal at John Burns in the custom consulting practice, and Chris is with her today. He's assisting and is the chief demographer over there. So Molly and Chris, I'm pleased to introduce you both, and we'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Heather. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm excited to talk about this new generation. We're going to talk a lot about, from a big picture perspective, the demographics. We have Chris Porter, as Heather mentioned, our chief demographer, who has been tearing apart the census and looking at everything you need to know about the housing market, what's going on with this new consumer group, and then what it means for home. I'm going to go through a little bit on the company and a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, and I'll turn it over to Chris, and then we'll dive into preferences as it relates to home and what it means for this new market. So a little bit about us. We are a research company nationwide. We focus on everything that has to do with real estate investment as it relates to housing trends, consumer research, and we do a lot of work on the ground and with sales agents and a lot of home builders and developers and financial groups across the country. We are a nationwide company, so we have offices all over the country, and we're doing research all over the country as well. We do have 9 offices in 9 different states. We have several consultants, again, on the front lines looking at what's going on out there in the market. This is a summary of really what our company does as a whole. It starts first with, is the market healthy? What's going on out there as far as trends go? We're looking at demand by life stage. We have a proprietary model that looks at who's buying homes by life stage, what they're buying, and what that means for housing. We do study, and I'll touch on our consumer research efforts, where we're talking to new home shoppers and resale shoppers out there on what they're looking for in home trends. We're going to largely focus on the new home shopping world today and the millennials. We're looking at housing supply, the competitive environment, what builders are out there, what products are out there, what their choices are, and how that relates to affordability, and then certainly looking at the financial implications, marketing, and sales. The 2 biggest, most proprietary things on the new home side that I believe are essential in understanding what consumers want and how you actually provide the right results for them is looking at our demand by life stage, looking at consumer preferences, and certainly working with architects, new solutions, much like Electrolux is doing, and how do we actually bring better solutions to the market. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Porter. Again, he's been tearing apart the census. He's going to share some of the big picture trends as it relates to this new group.
Thanks, Molly. So if we can go to the next slide, one of the things we want to talk about is just who is this group. The millennials are a group that we're defining here as the group born between 1980 to 2000. It ties in nicely with our Consumer Insights survey. But the big takeaway here is this is a huge generation. So if we consider that population born from 1980 to 2000, there are 92 million of them that are estimated in 2015. That's 4.4 million births per year during that time period, 1980 to 2000. I should just point out that does include those who immigrated to the U.S. It's not just those born in the U.S., but clearly it's a big number. The next slide will show us that because some of this group was born as late as 2000, this means that there's clearly some of this group that's not yet of home buying age, or some of this group that's not even of adult age. In fact, about 48 million of this population will be 25 years older in 2015. And this graph, if you see the box highlighted in red there, it shows just how big this population is in comparison to the group that's just a little bit older than them. And again, keep in mind this includes people who were not born in the U.S. but immigrated here to the U.S. So what does this mean for opportunity for housing going forward? So right now, the Gen Y group that's 25 and older represents 20% of the 25-plus population in the U.S. today. 5 years from now, as more of them are aging into that 25-plus group, they're going to represent 32% of the population. And by the year 2025, when all of them are now in that 25 or older group, they'll represent 41% of the 25-plus population in the U.S. And this is all data that comes from the latest release by the Census Bureau. One of the things about this group is they are far more diverse than any other generation before them. As I mentioned, those population numbers include those who were born outside of the U.S., and in fact, 14% of this population today was born in another country. On top of that, there's an increased level of racial diversity, and this group it really is the most diverse group ever. Now, certainly one of the big questions that we get is why homeownership is down so much for this group. And a big part of this is really due to their stage in life, rather than necessarily a shift in mindset. And in fact, we've seen survey after survey that suggests that the great majority of this generation does ultimately desire to own a home. But if we consider marriage and children as the big stepping stones to buying a home, we have to look at how that's changed over time. And if we look just at the group that's 25 to 29 years old, 68% of that age group was married with a child back in 1967. And today, only about 24% of that group is married with children. That's a huge shift, and it really speaks to why this population today doesn't have some of the same pressures to buy a home as in the past. And you can see in this graph here that really does show that declining trend. 68% in 1967 were married with a child. By 2012, it's only 24%. Next slide, this is sort of a fun fact. If we look at back to 1980, the median age for a woman to get married was 22 years old, and the average age at which a woman had her first child was 22.7 years old. Now we flash forward to 2013. On average, women are having their first child even earlier at 25.8 years, and the median age for a woman to get married is 26.6 years old. So this clearly shows that the population today is getting married and having children later than previous generations. This next slide shows exactly when that change took place. You look back to around 1992 or so, we saw on average that births were actually occurring at a younger age than in marriage at that point. It's just kind of an interesting fact about demographic trends over time. On the next slide, this is sort of another interesting fact as well. This generation is less likely to have a driver's license, whereas 93% of the 20 to 24-year-old population had a license in 1980. Only about 77% of this age group has a license today. The idea of ride sharing is much more popular, whether it's from a service like Uber or Zipcar, or it's from their parents, or it may be that a greater number of them are in college, as we're going to see on the next slide here. Clearly, this is an extremely well-educated generation. It's estimated that 35% of 30-year-olds in 2011 had a bachelor's degree or higher. You compare this with just about 15% or 25% for much of the 80s and 90s, and below 15% in the early 1960s. So clearly, they're well educated. But along with that education comes more debt, and the graph here shows the total student debt in the U.S. today, topping $1.1 trillion. That's nearly tripled since 2005. And not all this debt is owed by the Gen Y population, but based on the data that we've seen on who owns the student debt, it clearly shows that they're not paying it off anytime soon. About 1/3 of the debt is owed by people in their 20s, another third by people in their 30s, and a remaining third owed by people who are 40 or older. So this debt is going to follow them for a while. Money that they're spending paying off these student loans is money they aren't able to put towards a mortgage payment. And in fact, a white paper we had written earlier on this year on this subject shows that about 8% fewer homes are transacting this year compared to normal levels, largely as a result of, solely as a result of student loans. The next slide shows the median income for males and females over time. You can see that the males' median income has been declining over the long term, and this is inflation-adjusted dollars. Really, that's a result of decreased participation in the labor force. That's one of the reasons that we're seeing decreased incomes for males. Females are showing a rise in the median income, and while they're making great gains, they're better educated. That is also partially due to increased participation among females in the labor force. One of the things you will see is that we've seen a decline in the median income for both groups since the recession here began just a few years back. We can skip to the one last slide. Before I turn things over to Molly, I want to talk a little bit about the findings from home ownership. We look at the home ownership rate for the groups that are under 35 years old today, and they are much lower than previous generations, particularly the group that's 30 to 34-year-old today and 25 to 29 years old today. Home ownership for these groups were particularly hard hit during the recession, and even their ability to form households has been significantly diminished. What this has done is created some great pent-up demand for household formation and demand for sale homes among this group that will come to fruition. The next slide, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the great opportunities that this generation represents for the future. They are huge in volume, as we pointed out. They're highly educated. Where there's this household formation that is pent up today, and they will be getting married and having children. This is just a delayed from previous generations, but it is likely to happen. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Molly, who's going to talk about our consumer insights.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. Okay, so let's talk about creating answers together. We're going to go through some of the high-level information as it relates to consumers out there shopping. Particularly, we're going to focus on, obviously, the millennials or Gen Y, and we're going to talk about some of those solutions that you should be thinking about. But most importantly, what's going to happen in the next couple of years? Should you be planning for them, and what does that look like? Consumer Insights, for those of you who don't understand it, again, it's a survey we send out through the new home builders and community developers out there. It's a huge thanks to them. They send out a ridiculously long survey. However, I think consumers really like to talk about home, and they really like to look and shop on what they want on home. So it's amazing how many people do respond to this. We had about 22,000 people take the survey last year of the million people we sent it out to, and overall we've done 3 surveys over the last several years, and we have about 50,000 responses that we're looking at. We will focus specifically on today our most recent survey. So that is that 22,000 folks, and we will focus on the millennials within those groups. And it's interesting to look at how Gen Y is taking part in the shopping world out there. So of the 22,000, about just under 20,000 were new home responses, and we did have 2,000 plus responses thanks to Zillow, who sent that out to their shoppers as well. We talk about a ton of things. We're not going to cover everything today, unfortunately, but we will hit the highlights. And again, I think the things that are most important as we start talking about this new generation. But we have information on attitudinal stuff, interior style, home, community preferences, you name it. And we'll hit, again, some of those highlights today. So who is the new home consumer today? When we look at the millennials, I think it's really important to note, again, born from 1980 to 2000. If you look at a bunch of different sources out there, I think Harvard reports it's 1984 to 2000. Wikipedia does it differently. We take sort of the middle of the road just to be safe here. A lot of times I'll have developers say to me, you know, Gen Y is definitely really present in this section, and I'll always caveat that with, okay, well, what age groups are you targeting? Because it's really important to look at that when you're comparing to your own information. So we're looking at 1980 to 2000. What does that mean? That person's 14 years of age all the way up to age 34. So it is, you know, we have, the millennials are still in school, very much so. We have single parents. We have families out there. We have singles out there. And as Virginia noticed, or noted as well, quite a few of those folks are still out there in the rental world or living at home with mom and dad, and they are moving out there into home ownership. So what age should they begin shopping? As we look to our new home information, there really are fewer Gen Y shoppers out there in relationship to the overall population. So as Chris noted, there's 20% of the population out there. 15% of Gen Ys are actually shopping out there today, so that's important to understand. So it's a little bit less in relationship to its own population. But 4% are actually under age of 25. So we really focus on that 25 plus when we're looking at consumer trends. 33% are ages 25 to 30. 63% are actually 30 plus years and older. So some of the information that Chris was referencing, they're getting married older, they're having children later than their parents did, and all of that really impacts what's going on out there and who you should be targeting. Again, as we look at the overall population, we're looking now at the 25 plus group as we look for housing trends, housing solutions, and what's going on. So that's really why we're focusing on the 25 plus. So again, it's 20% of the population, as Chris noted. 15% of those are new home shoppers, according to our last survey. Does that vary by geography? Absolutely. So as we look at geographies and we look at the millennials, who's actually out there? The Midwest actually represents the highest percentage of Gen Y shoppers out there, and that's at 21%. Why are they a bigger percentage of the shoppers out there? Frankly, because their parents are going to Florida and other locations as they're retiring, and it's a smaller percentage that are actually buying homes in the Midwest. 11%, as you can see, in the Northeast, 16% in the Southeast, 18% in Texas, 17% in the Southwest, 10% in the Northwest, 14% Northern California, and 14% in Southern California. And as we get to Northern Florida, it's 13%. So all those numbers look really similar. And then when we get to Southern Florida, that's the lowest percentage logically because we have a lot of people retiring in Southern Florida. So 15% on average. It does vary across regions, but not dramatically. The largest percentage really being in the Midwest, the lowest percentage really being in Southern Florida. All pretty logical as you look at, you know, why people might migrate to one area versus another. What life stages are they? Only 10% are actually single, and they're largely couples and families. So you can see the importance of relationship formation, whether they're married or not, and certainly families. So 40% young couples, 40% are families. When we look at the overall family percentage out there shopping, more of those families are actually Gen X versus Gen Y, so that's kind of important to note. And certainly Gen X, as you saw earlier, is a bigger percentage of the shoppers out there today because, you know, part of that generation isn't 14 years of age either. So that's important to consider too. So couples and family formation, as Chris was noting earlier, it's a really big deal for new housing and particularly for this generation. And because they are actually, as you look at men versus women, the percentage of that 20 to 30-year-old group is getting married a lot. The percentages are down dramatically. It's important to consider. So what does that mean? So gear up for Gen Y. There'll be a much bigger population as we're looking at 2019. So if I look at my numbers here, by 2019 they start to rival their parents. So their parents still remain the largest population at 32%. Gen Y at 25 plus becomes 30% and gets much closer. But we really want to focus on, as you can see, they become a much bigger presence when they're 30 years of age and later. So it might even be a couple years after that 2019, but certainly relationship and marriage and family are all going to have a big impact on that. So what do they want in housing, and how are they different as it relates to housing preferences, and what are some other things that you should be thinking about? So as we look at their relationship, one of the things I always look at is, are they different? We talk a lot about how this new generation is different, and there's so many things that you have to think about. They are certainly more connected. They don't know life without being connected. But things as it relates to affordability, you have to think about, what can I afford? What are my choices? What are my needs? And what are the things that are going to motivate these consumers to come out and buy a home? So as we look to Gen Y, you can see on the right, we asked a variety of things from location all the way down to environmentally sensitive practices, accessibility, neighborhood street appeal, safety, home design, and so forth. Nationally, number one is location, followed by price and home design. And it's really the same percentages as you look for Gen Y. And they're only 15% of this sample, so it's not like they're skewing that relationship there to the left. It starts with location. It starts with it follows by what they can afford. And interestingly enough, I think it's always intriguing, and it's been this way for the last several surveys we've done. It's interior home design that has such a large impact on our home choices. But it does come down to, what are their choices before they can choose what they want. As we look to their favorite styles, interestingly enough, not contemporary, not super modern, but we're certainly seeing a movement towards more modern styles. But it's not solely surrounding around this millennial generation. I actually see in some markets a bigger trend towards their parents versus just the millennials. But their number one style is modern traditional. So we asked a variety of pictures, as you can see on the screen here, and it's really this lower right one, and that was their parents' favorite style too. So as we look to top styles, casual organic, modern traditional, and style on a budget. This bottom slide here, and this generation loves Target shopping, and that is a Target, that's where you can buy that furniture, actually. So as we look to, again, all of those preferences and what the percentages are, it's not just a slightly higher percentage that's modern traditional. It's really a substantially higher percentage for modern traditional at 34%, and it's a larger percentage than the national average. And then the next closest is that Target photo, which is style on a budget, which is not uncommon for this generation, but logically speaking, when Gen Y was just starting out and their parents were just starting out, I'll bet you style on a budget was important to them as well. I do always look at things like contemporary and minimalistic and ultra-modern to see if those come up much larger for this generation, because we hear a lot. They want more urban, they want more modern, they want more of those things. I'm always looking for either to confirm those trends or, frankly, bust those trends. And I would say this one is going more towards that modern, clean lines, but they want that traditional flair as well. Do they want bigger? Absolutely. 76% want a larger home. And, of course, they're getting married and they're having children, and that is very typical in the life stage that they're in. 44% actually want bigger for all generations, and if we look, homes are growing over time. In 1950, it was 1,000 square feet, growing up to 1,500 in 1970, 2,200 in 2000, and the average in 2013 was 2,200, and we'll see what that number is for 2014. One big trend that I am seeing that is very different as we look at these younger generations is they are more casual. So the younger the profile, we do see a preference for more casual. So we do ask silly questions like, what kind of shoes do you like to wear on the weekends, and some other attitudinal things. But I find it interesting when I'm looking at the overall preference for shoes, stylish casual shoes, nationally it's 30%, and that number actually gets to be higher as I look at the older profiles. But Gen Y sits here at 33%. This is a generation, as we look at some of those trends, they're less influenced by rules. So you'll see a higher percentage actually have tattoos, a higher percentage will live some, choose some different things that might be a little bit more casual than their parents. And certainly this is another trend to show you, as you're marketing and targeting to some of these new consumers, it is a more casual profile today. If we look at size of home, this very much varies by geography. So I hesitated on even showing size because it is so influenced by geography. It comes down to what can I afford, how much, what are my choices out there, and nationally speaking, 2,000 to 3,000 square feet is that target square footage that they're looking for. Now, if you're looking in a much less affordable area like Southern California or areas in different parts of the country like New York or, whatever areas of the D.C. area, certainly those numbers are going to be influenced by what can I afford and what my choices are. But nationally, it is 2,000 to 3,000. If I look at things like outdoor space, so again, kind of tying to the urban trends, are they really looking for smaller spaces and things like that? We asked them outdoor preferences. Well, how do they use the outdoors? The number one for Gen Y was really entertainment and recreation. If you look at their parents, number one is actually to provide privacy between me and my neighbors. This is a slightly more social generation, but it's not dramatically different. So 76% entertainment and recreation. But the biggest difference is, logically speaking, because of the percentage of consumers out there in this group that are married and forming families, it's about children play areas, and pets are big for this group. So if I look at park preferences as an example, dog parks have really moved up in the food chain as far as preferences go for park amenities. It's really big for the millennials, too. I mean, they treat their pets like children if they don't have children yet, and they do have a high percentage of couples without children in that 15% if you look at that relationship. So be thinking about pets and those kinds of things as it relates to community amenities as well. If we look at backyard preferences, again, considering their couples are planning for families, and they are a big portion are families, if you look at what they really want, number one, it's that large open lawn. So they are looking for bigger spaces in their backyards, but once again, remember, what can they afford, what are their choices, and how do I give them big? And I'm going to say form and function first, with the idea of going back to my prior slide, focusing on how will children live in that outdoor space, how will your pets live in those outdoor spaces, and also entertainment and recreation being the number one. How can I entertain great in those spaces? I love this slide to the left, which is it's a community in Seattle, great outdoor space. I could see living out there. I could see families living out there. It really marries to all those things, but yet it's small and it's quaint and it's functional and it lives great. It has that casual presence that we see in some of the trends we're looking at. I would call that modern yet traditional as well. So ideal lifestyle, do they want urban? And, as Virginia mentioned from Electrolux, a lot of these consumers aren't married yet and don't have families, but the percentages that are out there looking for new homes, not renting, are looking for suburban first. So suburban master plan, suburban large lot. If they are single, not married, certainly it's logical that they would want to rent, be close to nightlife, be close to places where they're forming and forging new relationships and things like that, and frankly being close to jobs. That's more convenient. But the new home shoppers out there, it is suburban master plan first by a landslide, followed by large lots, so bigger lots for their kids, and then traditional neighborhood design is slightly lower, interestingly enough, than their parents. It's actually the boomer buyer that prefers traditional neighborhood T&D over their kids, and that's because it's courtyard living, easy maintenance, lock and leave. So do they want to live in the city core? How far away do they want to live? They would prefer, again, based on affordability. If they can afford it, it's within that 15 to 30 minutes from the city core. That has more to do with not just because there are more suburban locations there, but oftentimes the city core is higher in crime. So if I'm a couple with children, You tend to actually drive a little bit farther, not just for larger yards, but safety, better schools, and things like that. And oftentimes the city core struggles from having the right educational system there, as well as crime issues. Number 2 is outer suburban, 30 to 60 minutes. Moving to, again, do they want attached? Do they want detached? By a landslide, it's certainly detached. Again, there are great solutions, and thinking about affordability, you really have to look at what they can afford and by choice. And so this can vary by market. They will pay more for detached, but if it comes down to it, certainly attached is a nice alternative if there are no other choices.
So let's look at the top 10 trends for Gen Y today. Number 1, design really matters. It's one of the most important factors that you can influence today. Price and location are number 1 and number 2. However, that's much harder to influence. You can control design by understanding what they want first and delivering some of those design features that they're looking for. Yes, they do want to own today. However, fewer of them are married and with children, and so that's influencing the number of people that are out there actually shopping for a home today. They do want suburban. They do want single-family detached. And again, as they marry and have children, we're going to see a lot more of this generation out there shopping for homes. There are 15% of the shoppers out there and 20% of the population, but that's going to continue to grow in a super big way. Affordability is number 1. They will drive for affordability. However, they do want to live 15 minutes to 45 minutes from the core. So does Gen X. So do their parents. But they will drive as they marry and have children to store the bikes and trikes and all those other things as they create bigger families and so forth. They do want bigger inside and out for their growing households. Remember, they were the ones who wanted homes from 2,000 to 3,000 square feet, and they were the ones who actually wanted the bigger backyards, where we see smaller yards, smaller yard preferences for their parents and some of the other generations. Focus on function over size. Despite the fact that they do want larger, at the end of the day, it has to be about affordability, and it has to be about, again, accommodating their lifestyle. Think social indoors and outdoors. They are a more casual generation, so privacy is less important to this generation as well. Remember, they want entertainment in their backyards. It's less about privacy between homes and things like that. Number 8, they do want energy efficiency, but they aren't ready to pay for it yet, according to our numbers. They want efficiency most, and time is the greatest commodity of all. So anything that has to do with efficiency through technology that will give them more time, better function, focus there. Number 9, they love their dogs too. So because this generation is getting married later and they're having children later, pets are big. So things like dog parks and things like that for new communities, certainly important for this generation. Last but not least, gear up for this generation to be more than double in size by 2019, and that's the 25-plus population that I'm talking about. So look for them out there in the home shopping world. They really will be most prevalent in their late 20s, and as you saw the numbers, 30-plus. We have a ton more that we could talk about, that we could break down for you. Certainly home specifications, community design, product solutions. We have a new program coming out called Design Lens. It's an architectural library of some of the best designs across the country. We'll also be featuring 8 new designs, the freshest designs actually out there on the market, to help you stay apprised without having to jump on a plane and go all over and see all this stuff yourself. So be looking for that. Communications, should you be in online, Facebook, Twitter, all the ways to communicate out there, both for this generation and all generations. So any way we can help, that's why we're here. Demographic trends, consumer insights, product solutions, housing trends. We try to do everything we can to help you make a better real estate investment, better decisions, you name it. So our contact information's here. I'm hoping all of you have a great holiday this season. If you have any questions, just give us a call. Thanks, and have a great week.